In general, it's pleasure that you are going to apply for ITMO micro fellowship, and I'm happy to discuss with you your work. As far as I understand, you did your PhD already. You did your PhD in Iran.
Yeah.
After that, you moved to Ireland, and after that, you stayed in Ireland for the postdoc, and now you are a senior researcher.
Yes, yes, yes. I'm going to present in my presentation. Yes, yes.
Okay, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you so much. Thanks for the meeting. I'm gonna make it full screen. So the research center I work is called Bernard Institute. That's in University of Limerick, Ireland. So I will be talking briefly about advanced pharmaceutical manufacturing because my background is mainly in chemical engineering and pharmaceutical engineering. I actually got my BNG, MNG, and PhD in chemical engineering in Iran. So, and then I moved to Ireland in, one second. So I moved to Ireland in 2015. I started my employment as postdoc researcher in 2015. And since 2020, January, I got my recent fellowship. And then I moved to independent researcher as principal investigator. As I said, I work in Bernard Institute, University of Limerick. That's a new institute established in 2014. So the research, we have a research center specifically for pharmaceutical research called Synthesis and Solid State Pharmaceutical Center, or SSPC. I am actually a member of this research center. We usually do research on solid state pharmaceutic from molecule to material to manufacturing and process engineering. So my research area is divided actually into 4 categories: separation and purification membrane, which I did in my master and PhD, pharmaceutics, computational modeling and simulation, and hybrid processing. These are 4 major research areas. But currently I'm active in 2 main research areas called model-based process development and improving API bioavailability. API stands for active pharmaceutical ingredient. So here in this research institute, we focus usually in these 2 research topics. So in the first research topic, we develop computational model for different pharmaceutical processing. For example, here you see this was my postdoctoral researcher. Specifically, we develop mechanistic modeling for continuous processing. Here you can see a continuous pharmaceutical granulation. We develop population balance model, which is the conservation of particle number. And it's kind of the predictive modeling. So we try to predict the granule properties like granule size distribution, API content, porosity, uniformity, and we try to make a relation between process parameter and granule output. So the main mechanistic model here is population balance model, or PBM. We develop numerical technique to solve this equation for prediction of the process. On the other hand, we also develop artificial intelligence model for prediction of continuous pharmaceutical manufacturing. Here you can see an example of artificial intelligence for continuous granulation. So in this method, we try to make a relation between the input and output. For example, here you see a case study. Here we have 4 input and 3 output, which is the particle size characteristic. So we try to make a relation between the input and output by different artificial intelligence algorithms such as ANN or ANFIS. So the next research topic I talk about is improving API bioavailability. At the moment, there are 2 major problem in pharmaceutical industry. The first problem is continuous processing. So pharma industry is trying to move from batch processing to continuous processing. In this context, researchers try to develop hybrid processing and mechanistic or mathematical predictive modeling. And the second major problem in pharmaceutical manufacturing is how to improve API solubility, because nearly 60% of the new discovered drugs are poorly soluble in water or aqueous solution. So here in this research center, we try to use different methods to increase the solubility of API or drug. Specifically, we focus on 4 major techniques. The first technique is amorphous solid dispersion. The second is use of biological natural polymer to enhance the solubility. And the third technique we use is co-crystallization. Co-crystallization means crystallization between 2 API or 1 API and 1 neutral molecule. So we use continuous processing like twin screw extruder. We also develop predictive modeling to understand the solubility of API in different conditions. So the first technique we use is amorphous solid dispersion. Here you can see a case study we did on ibuprofen as API and 2 polymer. Basically, in this technique, we transform API from crystalline phase to amorphous phase because most API are in crystalline phase. And by this technique, we transfer to amorphous because amorphous phase have higher energy, free energy, so they have higher solubility. But the problem is that there is a risk of recrystallization because amorphous state is not stable. When we transfer to amorphous state, there is a risk of recrystallization. So we use the polymer to prevent recrystallization and make the API stable. So here you can see on the top right, the XRD pattern of API. So on the top is the reference for the API, which is crystalline but by different technique, we transform from crystalline to amorphous. And then you can see from XRD, the API has been transferred to amorphous phase. And on the bottom, you can see the dissolution rate. The below dissolution is for crystalline or pure ibuprofen, and the top is the ASD formulation. You can see the API dissolution is increasing by transformation to amorphous state. So the second technique we use is we actually implement the natural biopolymers such as lignin, which is derived from the biomass in formulation, because in solid state formulation, basically we have API and excipient. At least we have 2 components. So we try to use a biological natural polymer to enhance the solubility. Here again, you can see a case study. We prepared 2 formulation, acetyl salicylic acid, lactose, lignin, and different excipients. So we look at the effect of lignin on drug release, and we observe that the drug release is higher by adding lignin into the formulation. You can see here on the dissolution curve that the solubility is increasing by adding lignin. So we actually discussed the reason in terms of the interaction between the excipient and API and lignin, and how the API is increasing by adding lignin. So we use actually the drug granulation in this technique. And the third technique we use for improving API solubility is co-crystallization. So co-crystal is a new method. For example, here you can see we use twin screw extruder, which is a continuous processing, and we use ball milling. Ball milling is a batch processing. So we look at the effect of interaction between the API and coformer. So because for co-crystallization, we need a coformer. Coformer is a molecule that makes a hydrogen bond with the main API or drug. So we don't want to have covalent bonds, so we try to make a hydrogen bond. So the selection of coformer here is important to make sure that we have only hydrogen bond. So actually a new crystalline form is formed by co-crystallization. So the co-crystal has higher solubility, higher stability, and better properties. So we use also predictive modeling to understand the effect of process parameter on co-crystallization process. Beside the different experimental technique, we also develop some kind of computational modeling. So one class of computational modeling we use is mechanistic modeling based on the CFD. Here you can see we develop a CFD method to predict the solubility of API from the tablet. So here you can see the rectangle. Rectangle is a simple geometry of the tablet. So we simulated in COMSOL multiphysics software to see how API is releasing. Actually, tablet is kind of solid dosage drug delivery. So we predicted the concentration distribution over different time. So we use COMSOL multiphysics and DynaChem to find the fitting parameter and the unknown parameter. So the results are very useful to understand the effect of excipient and to design new control release system by predictive modeling. So because after we develop different experimental technique, we try to predict the solubility and API release rate. We also use other technique like thermodynamic model based on Cosmo RS to predict the solubility based on the computational chemistry. And on the other hand, we use artificial intelligence to predict the solubility based on the experimental data we have. That's kind of data-driven model. So we actually use these three techniques in total to predict the solubility. So I'm going to talk about briefly about our recently project in 2020. We got some funding. So the first funding I got actually late in 2019, but I started the project in 2020 in January. So that's Science Foundation Ireland. So here the main funding body in Ireland is Science Foundation Ireland, or SFI. So I got a starting grant. The value is around €500,000. That's over 4 years with one PhD student and one postdoc funded for 4 years. So by this funding, I established my research group working on development of advanced pharmaceutical manufacturing. So the second funding we got this year is Marie Curie co-fund. Again, we got in 2019, but we started 2020 for two postdoc fellow. We work on continuous phylochemistry and co-crystallization. Recently, we also apply on Marie Curie individual fellowship, or IF, but this project is submitted. We are waiting for decision. Decision will be in, I think, in February 2021. So the two projects we got funding, the first one is phylochemistry and continuous API synthesis. That's Marie Curie process co-fund. So in this technique, we try to develop a continuous API organic synthesis by using CFD and phylochemistry. We try to develop a coil reactor and implement the process control, because for process control, we need some sensor, we need control instrument at micro scale using microfluidic. So this is kind of continuous API synthesis based on phylochemistry. And the second project is multi-scale modeling for continuous co-crystallization. In this technique, we develop some mechanistic modeling, mainly based on the quantum calculation and population balance modeling mass transfer for understanding the process. Because in co-crystallization, one of the big challenges is how to understand the process as process is performing in the continuous mode, how we can control and understand the co-crystal formation and co-crystal purity. And the recent project we got funded in a SEARCH award is a continuous API crystallization using membrane technology. In this technique or project, we try to develop a membrane system for continuous crystallization. There are different advantages in this process. For example, we can combine crystallization and granulation in one unit operation. So there is a high level of control over API crystallization so that we can prepare API at nanoscale. So we can synthesize or prepare API nanoparticle by this technique. This technique is also inherently a continuous processing, which is something interesting for pharmaceutical industry. So that's actually a hybrid processing combination of crystallization and membrane technology. We try to implement a process control to predict and control the API and excipient composite granule formation by this technique. So in summary, my research area are divided, in a general sense, it's divided in 4 categories. I would say it's continuous pharmaceutical processes such as continuous granulation, co-crystallization, and organic synthesis. And model-based pharmaceutical process development, we use different techniques to develop predictive model for processing, improving the solubility of poorly water-soluble API, as I said, by different techniques such as amorphous solid dispersion. Membrane separation, I try to combine membrane with pharmaceutical processing to develop hybrid processing. And the last one is hybrid pharmaceutical processing, such as co-crystallization and granulation. And this is the end of my presentation. Thank you so much for your attention. If you have any question, I would be happy to answer your question.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Konstantin, Alexandra, any questions?
I can see more guests here.
I wanted to ask you if you showed a slide with you suggest that you are using artificial intelligence and also computation in that case, and shows a model of multi-layer perceptron or something like that.
This one? Oh yeah, oh, they don't see. Let me just stop sharing. Sorry. Oh yes, stop actually sharing, but I think you're talking about this one, right?
I am talking, it was also one before, I think, this one, yes.
Okay.
Input parameter, you control the flow rate.
Yeah. So we here actually we have 4 parameters. One is liquid to solid ratio. Because we do wet granulation, we need liquid binder. So that's the ratio of flow rate. Yes, that's the ratio of flow rate liquid to solid. And the second one is speed of screw speed, powder flow rate, which is fit flow rate, and configuration.
And you use a model which you train and saying exactly the size, the output was the size. Like
that's size of the particle.
Or the size of particle. It's micrometer, and depending on various conditions, you just discuss the size.
Yeah, exactly. We look at the size, but in other projects, we are looking at different parameters like uniformity, API distribution, and different parameters. Yeah, but this is a starting point. For this project, we just look at these 3 parameters you see here, like D10, D50, and D19, which are representative of the particle size distribution.
And what was an accuracy of prediction?
I don't have it here, but the R square, we usually look at the accuracy based on the R square. I think R square was more than 0.99. Yeah, we got a very good R square for accuracy of the model. I don't have it here, but yeah, it was 0.99, I think.
And the other interesting thing with artificial intelligence was exactly the slide which you show, the first one. That's it's later on.
Later, maybe. Okay.
Later, no, go. Okay, back. This one which you show immediate, the first before this.
Which one you're talking about? This one?
That you are using, in particular, you want to predict solubility. We also are touching this topic of solubility, and what is an idea here? You are talking about water solution in majority.
Yes, so for this one, we look at the solubility of API in water and also in organic solvent, in different organic solvents. So as you know, the artificial intelligence is based on the training. So we need the big data, we get the big data from the lab. So, and then we train the network, and the network will be able to predict the solubility for other API or for other condition, so that we can save the cost and we can save the time for the experiment. So the idea is actually to generate a big library and then use the train network to predict the solubility for other conditions.
Do you expect some other common molecules to API that follow which you can predict with this database?
Yeah. We look at different API. Actually, this project was in collaboration with industry. Industry actually provide the API, and then we look at the solubility of different API depending on the industrial application. So they actually give us the type of the API, and then we look at the modeling and measuring the solubility. Because one application is for cleaning, for example, in pharmaceutical industry. So they want to do the cleaning. They need to see which solvent and which condition is the best for the best cleaning. So we need to look at the value of the solubility by experimental and different modeling techniques.
And how you look at solubility? You weight your substance, you dilute it, it's gravimetric study, or?
Yes, exactly. The main thing is gravimetric study. We usually use gravimetric study, but recently we are developing a new technique based on the Raman. So we have a Raman probe. We just connected to solubility vessel. So we try to predict the solubility by online Raman spectroscopy. But yes, for this project we use gravimetric method. Yeah. So we actually weight the API powder before and after solubility, and by that we can measure the amount of solubility in the solution. Yeah, the main method is the gravimetric. Yes, you're right.
Do you think it's also suitable for co-crystallization? Because you mentioned that co-crystal, and there, okay, what we discussed, how to make universal theory, not just for one class of the substance, but you also mentioned that co-crystallization can help. And we are working a lot with supramolecular assembly, also with hydrogen bonds, and look solubility for them. In our case, it's on contrary, it's less soluble with assembly. In your case, sometimes you are saying that it's increase of solubility.
Yeah, yeah. The main objective is to increase the solubility. Yeah, but for co-crystallization, yes, you're right. We need to design the conformer and two molecule for the co-crystallization, because sometimes if we don't design it properly, so we might get lower solubility. But the selection of the molecule is very important. In some cases, we also use some DFT to predict, or it's kind of a screening. So because we have a different molecule, we need to do a screening to see which molecule is the best option to increase the solubility. So selection of the molecule are very important for co-crystallization.
Are you doing it experimentally, or you have any database which allow you to discuss it?
No, we actually do experimentally. Yeah, we actually do experimentally, and in some cases we use some DFT simulation to find out the hydrogen bond to predict the possible interaction between two molecules. But we do mainly experimentally. Yeah, we just measure the solubility by co-crystal, and we see which one has the higher solubility.
Other questions?
Thank you so much.
Other questions? Sash, question? Okay. If it's not the case, I thank you for your talk, and probably I stop to record.